Hello everyone! So it is time for my yearly reading list. If you're new to this channel, basically what I do every year is I make a to be read list for the whole entire year. This is basically to keep me challenging myself and reading widely, reading a bunch of different genres and things like that. It's not something that I try to adamantly stick to. I don't try to go down the list and read each book one by one, and I definitely read stuff that's not on that list as well. I am a little, OCD about it, and I do like to put these books in categories because that is just my way. I didn't quite finish all my books from the 2015 list, so those books are obviously gonna roll over to the 2016 list because I still want to read them, but I'm not going to talk about them today. If you want to know what those books are, I have left the links to the actual list that I made on Goodreads for 2015, and I have also left the link to the 2016 list in the description as well if you want to know all the authors of the books and things like that, because sometimes in my videos I forget to say the author's name. So that way, if you also want to read some of these books and they sound interesting to you, the authors' names will be somewhere, even if they're not in this video. Let's go on with 2016's to be read list. Every year I try to have a must-read book. It is the one book that if I finish it, I'm totally happy with my reading this year. I didn't do so great at finishing my must-read book last year, but I'm hoping to do good at finishing my must-read book this year. And this year my must-read book is La Mort d'Arthur. Did I say that right? By Sir Thomas Malory. I've been really intrigued with Arthurian legend lately, and thus I want to read, some more classical stories about the King Arthur legend, so that when I read other books or watch other things, I can have kind of a comparison. I'm really intrigued to read this. I actually bought it in book form. I was going to do an audiobook, but the way people read the audiobook is so much less exciting than I think it should be read. Every time I listen to one, it's not as exciting as when I read it on my own, so I decided to just get a really pretty edition and read it my own self. Next, I have my Shakespeare Play of the Year. Last year, I did not read my Shakespeare Play of the Year, King Lear. The reason I didn't get to actually reading King Lear was because I spent more time last year studying the background of Shakespeare and getting books about that and reading background on plays than I did actual plays. Got a little over-involved in the history of the background and didn't end up reading last year's Shakespeare Play of the Year, so it's rolling over to this year. I have a series section, basically all the series that I want to read. So last year it was more about trying to finish some series that I'd started, and this year I've decided not to worry about trying to finish series because I definitely want to start more series than I want to finish them. I'm going to challenge myself to read more serious books. So my goal with this basically is to, if I've read the first book in the series, try to at least get to the second or third book within the year on those. If I haven't read the series, I'm going to start it, so at least read the first book. And if the book series is a trilogy, I will try to finish it. The first series that I'm going to read is The Giver Quartet. I have read The Giver, so I'm going to try to read the subsequent books, which are Gathering Blue, Messenger, and Sun. This shouldn't be too hard to complete the entire series because they are more like companion novels from what I've heard than they are, the continuing stories of things. So they take place in the same world, but they are not connected. Next, I want to start the Mortal Instrument series. I have read the first book, City of Bones, and I really enjoyed it, but I haven't read anything subsequently, so I'm going to try to get to at least the third book and maybe possibly into some of the Infernal Devices books. I'm going to read the Covenant of Mirwood series. I did read the original Legends of Mirwood series by Jeff Wheeler. I loved it. I was obsessed with it. There is a sort of spin-off series of that, which sounds really awesome. Definitely want to read it and review it because I really loved the first one so much. Then I'm going to try to finish the Lunar Chronicles. Read the first book, Cinder, really enjoyed it, loved the world, but I was waiting until all the books were finished and came out, and now they've all come out. So now I will marathon them all. I'm going to try to read at least 2 more Sherlock Holmes novels. I've read about 4, and I would like to read a couple more because I want to, finish it sometime. So I'm going to try to at least read Return of Sherlock Holmes and The Hound of the Baskervilles. Why can't I say that? I don't know. The only problem I foresee with this is that I have kind of struggled with the short stories of Sherlock Holmes. I like them, don't get me wrong, but I don't like to just sit and read short story after short story. I like to read short story books. Like, I read a short story and then I read it, a short story like a month later. I prefer long stories if I'm gonna do that. So at least if I do it this way, there's only 1 short story novel and then I get to read like a full novel. So that's what my plan is. We'll see if it works. I'm going to try to complete the Peter and the Starcatcher series. I read the first book and then I decided to read Peter Pan before reading the subsequent books because I just wanted to see how the world kind of compared after reading Peter Pan. So I still need to buy the 4th book, but I have books 1 through 3, so I'm very excited to read this. I would like to read the Pendragon Chronicles books. These are books that are sort of about the Arthurian legend, but I believe that it also ties in things from Atlantis into the story, which I think is really interesting. We have non-fiction books. First one is Life in Motion. This is the memoir of Misty Copeland. She is a ballet dancer. She is the first African-American soloist in the American ballet. So I want to read this because she really inspires me. Also, I've heard some of her backstory and it intrigues me, so would like to know more. I want to read Wildflower, which is Drew Barrymore's memoir. I'm kind of intrigued to read her other book that she wrote when she was a teenager as well. I forgot what that one's called, but I definitely want to read Wildflower. She just intrigues me. I think she's like just the most amusing person, and obviously she's got a really interesting life, so I'm intrigued to read about her life. I also got really interested last year just because, I don't know, I Wikipedia'd something randomly because I do that about Marilyn Monroe, and I got really interested in Marilyn Monroe's life, and she really intrigued me as a person, and so I would like to read a book about Marilyn Monroe, and I decided to pick Marilyn Norma Jean to read. I may read some others if I become so interested. Lastly, in the nonfiction section, I would like to read Dancing with Myself. This is by Billy Idol. It's sort of his memoir, and I'm intrigued by this because I saw him on Guitar Center because I love watching that Guitar Center concert shows, and his interview sections were just really interesting to me, and I just thought it would be a cool book to read. I really wanted to read it last year, but I never got around to it, so I'm hoping to get around to it this year. I have a reread section, just books that I would like to reread. First one is Enchanted. I talk about this a lot on my channel because this is like one of my first favorite books when I was a kid. I do try to reread it, but I like to forget it a little bit before I can reread it, and I've forgotten it enough that I can reread it again. This technically could be a series books because it is kind of part of a series, and I still haven't read the rest of the books. I don't know if I'll read the rest of the books this year, but I will definitely read this first one. I want to reread Firestarter, basically because I read it the first time as a teenager, and I would like to reread it as an adult and see what I think of it. I quite enjoyed it when I read it the first time, so I just want to see what I think of it again. I want to start rereading the Chronicles of Narnia series. I haven't read it since I was a teen yet again, but there are a lot of things that people say happen in these books that I don't remember. There's a lot of things that I don't remember about these books. And I just want to see if I interpret things in these books different. And I also want to read them in the order that they were published. There's this big debate apparently about reading the books the way they're ordered in this book, which is that it starts with Magician's Nephew, but that book wasn't published first. That was just put first later because it was actually written as a prequel. So I want to actually read them starting from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was the first official book, and see if, it's different. I just want to see what happens when I do that. Then I want to give Lord of the Rings a second go. The first time I read Lord of the Rings, I didn't enjoy it as much as I think I should have, because I kind of had a little bit of trouble with the middle book, Two Towers. It was kind of repetitive for me, and so I struggled with it, and it kind of made me not enjoy the final book as much as I think I should have. I really enjoyed Fellowship, but I didn't Return of the King as much as I wanted to, because I was still coming off of my not really liking Two Towers. So my goal is to give Lord of the Rings a second go. I did like it, but I didn't love it. So I want to see if I can love it this time. I want to read some of the Christian suspense thriller novels that I bought. I basically bought several Christian suspense thrillers by Frank Peretti and Ted Dekker because those were suggested to me, and I did read one Frank Peretti book, which was The Visitation, and I loved it. And so I went and bought some more Frank Peretti and some Ted Dekker, who also writes kind of suspense thriller novels from a Christian perspective, and then I proceeded to not read any of them. So I'm going to read these books by those two authors. I'm going to read Monster 3 and Obsessed. This book has both of them in there, and they're by Ted Dekker. Then I have The Bride Collector, which particularly sounds interesting to me because it's got, FBI involved, and the title is awesome. And then Frank Peretti and Ted Dekker wrote a book together called House. So I'm going to try to read all of those because those have been on my shelf forever. I have a miscellaneous, just random books. If I have time to read, I will read these. First one is Laurie Halse Anderson's The Knife of Impossible Memory. I just really like her books. I'm hoping you really love this one. We Were Liars. I bought this when everybody was reading it and reviewing it, and everybody seemed to enjoy it. And then I bought it and didn't read it. So I'm going to read it and tell you if I enjoy it. Sue Monk Kids, The Mermaid Chair. This is another book that has just been on my shelf for a long time, but I really like The Secret Life of Bees, so I'm hoping to like The Mermaid Chair. Joe Hill's Heart-Shaped Box. I've been meaning to read this for a really long time. I have read his book, The 20th Century Ghost. It's a short story novel. I really quite love that short story book. I'm excited to read his full-length novel, which I've been meaning to read for like an eternity. I want to read The Immortal. This book has been on my shelf for a while. My mom read it. She said it was awesome, but then I never read it, so I will read it because my mom said it was awesome. The Watch That Ends the Night. I did start this several years ago, but I realized at the time that it was kind of sad, and I didn't need to be reading a sad book that is about the Titanic. This is a cool book, though, to me, because it not only is it about the Titanic, but it is written in verse, so it's written in a poetical form. And it's about different characters and different people on the Titanic, as well as poems written kind of from the perspective of the iceberg and the ship, which is really intriguing from what I've read of it. So I'm excited to see how it finishes because I never finished it. So yay! A Long Way Down. This is a book that I want to read because I saw the independent film. I loved the film so much, and I want to see how the book compares to the film. This is written by the same person that wrote the book for About a Boy, which I love that movie too. I haven't read that book either, so I might pick up About a Boy as well, but I want to start with A Long Way Down. I'm going to try to read Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. I really loved To the Lighthouse, and then I meant to read Mrs. Dalloway, but I didn't read it. It wasn't so much that I couldn't get into it as the fact that it doesn't have chapters, and I understand why it doesn't have chapters because it's supposed to take place in one day, but I really kind of had a hard time with it just because it didn't have chapters, but I would like to challenge myself and read Mrs. Dalloway this year. I want to read The Girl on the Train just because everybody's been really talking about it. It sounds really interesting, and so thus I want to pick it up. I also want to read The Silver Linings Playbook, mostly because I really want to watch the movie, but I want to, for some reason, read the book first. Usually I will just watch the movie or read the book you know, I don't care which comes first because I will read the book regardless of if I've watched the movie. But for some reason, I want to read the book of this first. The night that Gwen Stacy died. It sounds really interesting, and I read like a couple pages of it once, and the writing style was kind of cool. So I would like to, you know, get on trying to complete that. And the last one is Being Friends with Boys. This just intrigued me because I'm a friend with a lot of boys, and I want to see if I find it amusing and I can relate to it. Whoa! So that is something like way over 40 books that I'm going to try to read. Like I said, I've left a link to some of those Goodreads lists if you want to check out what I'll be reading this year and you want to read some of these as well and just join my challenge. And that is it for today. Thank you for watching this extremely, I'm sure, long video. I will see you soon. So, yay! Bye!